So I want to be a commentator tonight. And have you ever watched the president, doesn't matter which one, have you ever watched the president give a speech and then the commentator comes on afterwards and says, this is what the president just said? And you think to yourself, I watched the whole speech, right? I really know what the president just said, right? But the commentator has to come along to kind of help us, tell us what was just happened, right? And how many of you, anybody been watching the Suns games last couple weeks, right? And then after the Suns game's over, we get Sir Charles and the Shaq to tell us what just happened, whether they won or they lost. And it's like, I think we watched the game, but you know, you got to have a commentator. And this is, you know, this is kind of our high holies. This is our holiest week in the Christian church. And so, you know, I'm gonna give you my commentary or the last week. And I, you know, one of the things that I loved about Easter morning is that I got to attend service here at 6 a.m. And if you've never been to the sunrise service here at 6 a.m., it is special. It is, and when the mics worked, it was even more special, right? But it was so special. It was so special that So we're gonna talk about the big events of last week, because it truly is. It's inherently our spiritual journey unfolded in just a few days. So here's the question that I want to start with tonight. What is the requirement for resurrection? If you had to look at all the spiritual principles and ideals, what is the requirement for resurrection? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Oh my gosh, that's such a good answer. Yes, we actually have to go into crucifixion before we get to resurrection, right? And for some of us, we don't really like that idea. Like, we're all about the new. Have you ever gone shopping for a new outfit or something for your house, and then you just kept the old one around just in case you needed it, or somehow it someday fit again, or whatever the story was? And that some of us are little hoarders, right? Some of us are just a little pack rats, because we want to make sure that if we ever need all 5 of our wedding dresses, we have them. Because you just never know when they're going to run out of new wedding dresses, and you might have to pull from the inventory, right? And so over and over again, what I want you to see is that you cannot truly embrace the resurrection until you've experienced the crucifixion. Surprisingly, in our culture, we have a hard time with this. Do you know that as of recently, the average American household has 300,000 items? 300,000 items. Now, maybe, just maybe, that might be a little extreme, that the average size of the American home has nearly tripled in the last 50 years. That 1 out of 10 Americans now have off-site storage from their home because their garage and their junk room was not enough. They had to rent out, right? That 25% of the people who own 2-car garages cannot fit either car into them. 32% of people can fit 1 car into their 2-car garage. And that in the United States, there's an upward of 50,000 storage facilities. For the last, there are 5 times more storage units than there are Starbucks. Remember when we used to say there were gas stations on every corner? And now you can't find a gas station, but you can find a storage unit and a Starbucks, so you have caffeine and space for all your stuff, right? Currently, there are 7.3 square feet of storage outside the home for every man, woman, and child. 7.5 square feet of storage. And in fact, in the U.S. now, we could put every man, woman, and child standing in a storage unit and have more than enough storage room for all of us. Now, I don't want anybody to think there's a conspiracy theory brewing here, but I just want you to see how much stuff we have. You know, I did a series a couple years ago on Marie Kondo and letting go and moving in. And so at some level, we know there's a joy in cleaning out our stuff. Like, have you ever cleaned out, like if you have a junk drawer or a room that's full of stuff and you clean it out, and what happens is all the energy that was stored up in that room gets released. And have you ever gone like cleaned up the backyard or cleaned up a room and you keep wanting to walk into that space because all that energy has been released and it just feels so good to be in that energy that over and over again we know that there's a power if we will let go. And I really want you to hear that there's a power released in your life if you let go, that you cannot experience by holding on. Now, I want you to hold on to all the things that are serving you. But everything that is not serving you in your life, I believe that it's time to let it go. That we have to be willing to walk into the crucifixion experience. We have to be willing to let go of those things that no longer serve us. Now the question becomes, who gets to decide what's serving you and what's not serving you? Has God ever gently or not so gently removed something from your life that you felt you should have another 10-year lease on? Right? And it feels painful. Like it kicks in a deep sense of grief because we're convinced we're never going to be blessed again. That if we let this situation, this job, this relationship go, we're convinced this is it for all times. Richard Rohr, the Catholic priest and mystic and teacher and author, said, sooner or later, life is going to lead us, as it did with Jesus, into the belly of the beast. Into a situation that we cannot fix, cannot change, cannot control, we can't explain or understand. That's where transformation happens the most easily. It's where you're uniquely in the hands of God. Right now, it seems that the whole world is in the belly of the beast together. We are all safely held in the loving hands of God, even though we don't fully realize it. All of us experience the bizarre, the tragic, the nonsensical, the unjust, but we're not all experiencing pain the same way. So try not to judge others too harshly for their reaction. We don't know what brought them to this point. However, we can see all around us the wounds as though we are going through this deep, profound, transformative effect, as Jesus did. And then we will become sacredly wounded and yet not deny the experience. The genius of Jesus' teaching is that it reveals God uses tragedy and suffering, pain and betrayal, death itself, not to wound us or punish us, but to bring us a larger identity. And I want you to hold that idea. That every time Spirit asks you to let go, it's to reveal a higher identity of you. That we tend to know ourselves in relationships to other things. We know ourselves in relationships with others, or we know ourselves in relationship with our work, or we know ourselves in a relationship, this is my home, or this is the car I drive, or this is how much money I have. We tend to know ourselves in relationship, and while we hang on to those relationships, what is really happening in this deep sense of letting go is that you have to know yourself in a greater way. You have to understand who you are, not in the limited human experience, not in the limited personality or your ego, but as a divine creation. It is in the letting go, and even in the pain of the letting go, that we actually come to know ourselves again, as if for the first time, and to see ourselves in a way that is transformative. That every time we are asked to let go, it is for a transformation into a greater experience of yourself. So as we celebrate this holy season, where are you being asked to let go? What thought, what belief, what relationship, what situation, what object, what thing are you being asked to let go of to know yourself in a greater way? And the human part of us would rather pass. The human part of us would rather stay the way it is. Like, I know this. Even though I may not love it, you may not enjoy it from time to time, I know this, and I would rather hang on to what I know than to move forward into a greater way. And the pain of letting go, the grief, the disappointment, are vehicles to the resurrection, to a profound transformation. Joseph Campbell, the great author and professor and teacher, said this: "What has always been the basic to resurrection or Easter is the crucifixion. If you want to resurrect, you must have crucifixion. Too many interpretations of crucifixion have failed to emphasize that the emphasis on the calamity of the event. But if you emphasize the calamity of the event, then you look for someone to blame. That's why people have been blaming the Jews all these years. But it's not a calamity if it leads to a new life. Through crucifixion, you unshell yourself and were able to be born into the resurrection. That is not a calamity. We must look freshly at it so that the symbolism does not get lost." He went on to say, "The hero's journey is not just a mythical story, but it's deeply embedded in our human condition. It tells us the story of a person encountering a difficult life problem, and their journey is to resolve it through personal transformation. Sometimes the change is intentional, like a new relationship, a new marriage, a new job. And the hero is motivated to attempt to endure the process of change. Other times the change is unintentional, trauma, injury, relationship breakup, loss of a loved one, and leaves the hero shocked. But the true message is that we are more than the events of our life." And I love the imagery that it gives, to be unshelled, right? Some of you remember many years ago when my son was very small. He came running into my bedroom during Easter morning as I was getting ready for church. And I've told this story. He had a pet snake. And don't ask me why we did that. It was one of those parental misses, right? And he came running into the room and said his snake had shed its skin. And I went that Easter morning and made a point that is the Easter message, right? That we have outgrown our skin and that we need to grow, to change, to evolve. We need to release that outer environment so that God has room for more. Reading from John 12:24, "For truly I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." And I want you to look at your own life. That every time we think we've got it all together, and then there's something that takes our wind, that just knocks the wind out of us. And we think we've fallen and that we will never get up. It is in those moments that in the rebirth of that, in the transformation of that, it allows us to be unleashed to the next level of who we are. Greek, it's called metanoia, the transformation that leads to a higher spiritual form. And the symbol of that is butterflies, right? The butterfly is the symbol of that deep transformation. It is the most powerful process. The plump little caterpillar is transformed into the wing work of art. And there's 4 stages to get to be a butterfly. The first one is where the egg is laid. And what I love about this imagery of the egg is laid usually on a branch or on a leaf or somewhere that when the little caterpillar comes out, there's a source of nutrition instantly. And I want you to see this in your own journey, that the Christ in you has been placed within you with everything you need around you for your full expression. That when you come out of your egg, when you come out of yourself, when you come out of your past, that God promises that you are on a healthy little leaf that you can just decimate with your eating, right? I thought that was funnier, so I'll just keep moving on. Right? Because then it takes us into the caterpillar phase. And the caterpillar phase, they call it the feeding stage. And in the caterpillar stage, they can grow 100 times their original size. In fact, a butterfly eats everything that it will ever need in the caterpillar phase. Right? It grows 100 times. It eats its whole nutritional needs in the caterpillar. So some of us are just spending a little too much time in our caterpillar phase, right? Right? But that's our eating phase, and we got to eat. And I want you to see how many times we eat because we're spiritually hungry. Like all addiction is because we're spiritually hungry, trying to satisfy that spiritual need. And then we go into the transition phase. We go into the chrysalis. We go into the cocoon. And there, the caterpillar is dissolved. And it is taken up by the imaginal cells, the imaginal disc that actually eat. They actually transform the caterpillar from the inside out. And that's a part that our ego probably likes the least. You know, we resist that deep transformation. We resist it. We want to stay just the way we are. And we don't always trust that those imaginal cells, those activity of spirit, that activity of God is doing a holy work. And then the final stage is when we break into the caterpillar. When we go through the effort and the work and the process of breaking out of the little shell that has restricted our growth, and we come into the fullness of who we are. And there's a cartoon you've probably seen there where the cartoon says the caterpillar is saying, "You'll never catch me in one of these," as it's watching a butterfly fly away. And that's really true, right? Because our caterpillar mindset can't imagine being a butterfly. We actually have to trust it. And this is where sometimes our thought process isn't helpful. Because sometimes our mind thinks we have to understand how the transformational process is going to work to get us to the next level. And the reality is that when we're really in that process of metanoia, when we're really in that process of deep soul transformation, your mind's never been there before. Your mind just is a story of where you have been, your beliefs about the past. And to truly move into the next level of life, there are times when you have to really suspend your thinking, suspend your beliefs, suspend your thought process to really move into the next level of life. A man found a cocoon of a butterfly one day, and a small opening appeared, and he sat and he watched the butterfly for several hours as it struggled to force its body through the little opening. And when it seemed to stop making any progress, it appeared that the little caterpillar had gone in as far as he could, and he could go no further. So the man decided to help the butterfly and took a little pair of scissors and snipped the opening open to making the cocoon easier for the butterfly to extricate himself. The butterfly easily emerged, but it had a swollen body and small little wings. And the man continued to watch the butterfly because he expected at any moment the wings would enlarge and expand and be able to support the body, which would contract at any time. But neither happened. And in fact, the butterfly spent the rest of its life crawling around in its swollen body with small little wings. And it was never able to fly. What the man in his kindness and haste did not understand, that it was when the restriction of the cocoon and the struggle to free itself, the butterfly was able to move through the tiny open, demanded that it force the fluid from its body and up into its wings, and to allow it to fly once it was released. Sometimes our struggles are exactly what we need in life. For we are allowed to go through life without any struggles. It would cripple us. We would not want to be as strong as we could be, but we would never be able to fly. So on a nice day and a little struggle is exactly what the doctor ordered. Okay, so here's the deal. What's between crucifixion and resurrection? You know what's between those? There's a thing. He went from crucifixion. Did he just pop out in resurrection? No, he went into the tomb. Tomb. Thank you. You were much quicker on the first one, but that's all right. He went into the tomb. Now, what does that mean to us, right? Because when we let go of the old, sometimes we want to just start dating right away. Do you know what I mean by that? So a relationship ends, and then there's a part of us that thinks we're never going to get into another relationship, so we just begin dating right away. And there's this experience of the tomb, and I want you to see it from a spiritual point of view. It is the womb. So you die to the old way, and you're really not ready for the resurrection yet. You have to actually go into the darkness of your own soul. You have to go into the quiet. You have to go and find a deeper level of yourself so that when you're born again, when you're born into the resurrection, you're not born at the same version that died, the same version that ended, that we need this time. And for Jesus, it was 3 days. It was actually less than 3 days, but we say it's 3 days. It was this time of completion. And over again, what I want you to see is that some of us, because of a lack of faith, go from an ending to a new beginning without the space of going deeper into our soul, of knowing ourselves in a greater and greater way. And without that, we just continue to... How many of you have ever had a painful lesson and it took you more than once to get it? Right? And if it takes us more than once, what I want you to see is that we hurried through it. We didn't have the faith to stop and to go deeper into ourselves, go deeper into the silence, go deeper into who we're being called to be because of that experience so that we could truly resurrect. Over and over again, what I want you to see are these 3 steps that we can't miss. And it all begins when we're willing to let go of what has been. When we let go of the old stories, the old situations, and we let go of who we have been. And then instantly we want to be born again. But it never happens that way. We have to go into a time of darkness, not to punish us, not to limit us. But in the darkness, you only have yourself. You have to go deeper into your own soul to find who you are, so that when the new life begins, you're not just recreating the old version of yourself one more time. I am here for the resurrection. Will you say that with me? I am here for the resurrection. One more time like we mean it. I am here for the resurrection. All right, so here's the deal. I want you to see this as your spiritual process. And over again, I want you to be able to name where you are in different situations of your life. And I don't want you to miss the middle step. Because as much as we don't like letting go, getting quiet and going into ourselves, we like even less. Like when we let go, we want to be distracted. We want to be busy. We don't want to think about what we're feeling. We don't want to actually go deeper into ourselves. But when we let go, we have to have the maturity to say, I need to stop for a moment. And I don't know if that moment is going to be a moment 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years for you until you can see yourself in a new way. That you know that you are more than your past. You are more than what you lost. You are more than what you let go of. And as you come to know yourself again and make new choices, you will be resurrected. You will come into the fullness of God. Because you are of spirit. You are of God. And no matter how much time and energy we spend believing that we are just human, you are never just human. You are in the image and in the likeness of God. And as we go through this spiritual process of letting go, of moving into a deeper understanding of self, and then of resurrecting, we over and over again come back to ourselves and who God created us to be. Will you pray with me? And I invite you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God. That today I want you to see yourself with new eyes. I want you to go deep enough into your own soul that you're willing to see yourself the way that God sees you. To go into the silence, to go into the darkness, to go into the unknowing, until you can truly see yourself again in a new way, with new light and joy and peace and power, until you have a new vision of yourself, of your life, of who you're called to be. So tonight we give thanks for the faith and the courage that Jesus lived to show us the way, as our way shower, as our teacher, as our guide. And we are willing to go through our own crucifixion, into the tomb, into the womb, and to be born again. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.